Family means forever, the banner read, stretched wide across my living room, anchored to the antique curtain rods I bought with my own bonus check last Christmas. There were people in my kitchen, in my guest room, on the stairs, kids playing tag in the hall, aunts I hadn't seen in years pouring wine in my marble-topped dining space like it was theirs. My name is Naomi, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like a stranger at someone else's party? I had just flown back from a medical workshop in DC. I was supposed to return Sunday, but the conference ended early. So I came home Saturday night, exhausted, sleep-deprived, craving nothing but a long shower and silence. Instead, I walked into a full-blown family reunion, 102 people, by my quick count. And not a single one expected to see me. Not my sister, Grace, who stood in the kitchen laughing in a dress I'd loaned her and never got back. Not my parents, who toasted to the power of togetherness under a chandelier I installed. Not even my own godmother, who gave me a surprised half-wave like I was a hired caterer showing up too early. No one said my name. No one apologized. No one asked why I was standing frozen in the entryway of my own house, holding a suitcase and a boarding pass, watching them use my space, my tableware, my life, like I'd been erased. Naomi, Grace finally chirped, loud enough for heads to turn. You're home early. Then she added, laughing, You don't mind, do you? It just made more sense to host it here. More sense. Because I paid the mortgage. Because I had the space. Because I was the useful one. Never the valued one. I didn't make a scene. I didn't scream, cry, or throw people out. Instead, I wheeled my suitcase into my room, locked the door, and started planning. 2 weeks later, after one signature, one final meeting, and one beautiful digital transfer, I had 98 missed calls, and Grace was screaming into my voicemail like her life was crumbling. Because the house they used like a community center wasn't mine anymore. And I hadn't just moved out. I had done something that would make sure no one ever forgot whose name built that foundation in the first place. They thought I'd simmer in silence. They thought my absence from the family group chat, the birthday dinners, the last-minute holiday plans was a weakness, not a decision. But when I shut my bedroom door that night, the sound of my own family laughing beneath the roof they never thanked me for still echoing through the walls, I didn't rage. I calculated. Because that house, the one with the open-concept kitchen and custom wood floors, it was mine. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Legally. My name was the only one on the deed. They had celebrated under a banner that said family means forever, while making it very clear that my place in the family wasn't. So I spent the next few days doing 3 things. Documenting everything. Photos of the crowd. Furniture rearranged. Trash bins overflowing with champagne bottles I didn't authorize. My bathroom, used, flooded, towelless. Meeting with a realtor. Not to list the house. Not yet. But to prepare the papers, and more importantly, find a buyer who wouldn't blink. Finding a new home. Smaller. Cleaner. Private. Mine. Not big enough for 102 people. But more than enough for one woman who had finally reclaimed her peace. The day I quietly moved out, Grace was still tagging herself in throwback reunion photos. Captions like, "Nothing like family in a place that feels like home to hearts." Except it wasn't her home. And she was about to find out just how temporary that comfort was. I waited exactly 2 weeks. Let the laundry pile up. Let the dishes crust. Let the reality of upkeep settle on their shoulders like dust no one was willing to clean. Then I signed the final sale. Cash buyer. No contingencies. Closing in 7 days. And that morning, as escrow was finalized, I left one thing behind. An envelope on the kitchen counter, addressed to Grace plus whoever else is still living here. Inside, a copy of the deed transfer, the realtor's contact, and a sticky note in my handwriting that said, "Looks like forever just ended. Good luck finding a new banner." That evening, my phone exploded. 98 missed calls. And a voicemail from Grace that started with shrieking and ended with, "You sold it. You sold the house. Where are we supposed to go?" I pressed delete, then poured a glass of wine, sat in my quiet, rented apartment and smiled. Because they had used me as a structure. But I had always been the foundation.
And now?
They could feel what it's like to lose something they never valued, until it was gone. The next morning I got a text from Dad. No greeting. No punctuation. We need to talk. You've made a huge mistake. A mistake? Funny. That's what they said when I turned down a stable residency placement to build my private practice. When I chose preventive care over big hospital prestige. When I bought that house without consulting the family. They only called it a mistake when it no longer benefited them.
I didn't reply.
I didn't have to. Because just hours later, my realtor called to confirm the buyers were walking the property. The same living room where I used to be asked to take everyone's coats? Now filled with architects sketching plans for a wellness retreat. The house was becoming a clinic. My clinic. I was leasing it back through a professional partnership. Same address, new purpose. No more potluck parties, no more sticky-fingered kids drawing on my walls. Just treatment rooms, calm, and me. Grace didn't take it well. She showed up outside my new place that evening, bangs wild, phone in one hand, iced coffee in the other like it might cool her rage. Naomi, what the hell? You just gave our family home away? What about tradition? What about holidays? I looked her in the eye. You mean the holidays I wasn't invited to? Or the ones where I came late, so you wouldn't have to rearrange seating? She scoffed. You're being dramatic.
No.
I'm being deliberate. There's a difference. She tried guilt next. Dad's heartbroken. Mom's humiliated. Do you know how this makes us look? I smiled. Like people who should have thought twice before treating me like a backup generator. Then I handed her a printed copy of the check. Not to flaunt it, to make it real. Congratulations, I said. Your reunion bought me a full medical wing and a life without crumbs. She stared at it like it might burn her fingers. Where are we supposed to go now? She whispered. Anywhere that doesn't have my name on the mailbox. She left in silence. Not because she ran out of words, but because there was nothing left she could say that would erase what she'd done. That night, I opened my calendar. First appointment in the new space. A single mother suffering burnout. Second, a teen girl with chronic fatigue, misdiagnosed too many times. Third, a retired nurse with no one to advocate for her care. I smiled. Because, while they mourned the loss of a party house, I was turning it into a place that actually heals. By the end of the week, the group chat I was never part of had turned into a full-blown crisis thread. How could Naomi do this? Where will we host Thanksgiving now? Did anyone get copies of Grandma's recipe binder before she changed the locks? I didn't read the messages directly. They came to me through screenshots from my cousin Layla, the only one who ever asked, "Hey, do you actually want to come?" instead of, "Why didn't you show up again?" She sent me one message that stood out more than the rest. They're acting like you burned down the house. But all you did was stop setting the table.
Exactly.
Because I've been hosting without being welcomed for years. They loved the space I created, the warmth, the comfort, but never the person behind it. Not when I skipped med school. Not when I launched my own integrative care practice. Not when I said, I'd rather do it differently, instead of, yes, Mom. To them, I was always the fragile one. The sensitive daughter. The overreacting sister. Until the deed said otherwise. Until their favorite party house had a new plaque by the gate. Shoreline Integrative Center. Founded by Dr. Naomi Reyes. And that plaque? It broke the illusion. Because the moment my name wasn't silent, it was threatening. I got one last email from Mom. No, dear. No love. Just. You've alienated yourself from everyone. You might own the walls, Naomi, but you've torn down the family. I stared at the line for a long time. Then I wrote back. You built a family where I was useful, but never valued. You expected me to carry everyone, and when I quietly stepped away, you called it betrayal. It's not. It's a boundary. If that tears something down, maybe it was never that strong to begin with. I didn't alienate myself. I just stopped offering free space in a home where I wasn't invited to sit. She never replied. That weekend, I opened the clinic doors to our first official clients. Mothers, daughters, people who had been dismissed by louder rooms, people who just wanted someone to listen. And in the quiet, healing hum of my new space, I thought, they had a chance to include me. They chose to use me instead. And now, they were standing on the curb outside a house they called forever, holding folding chairs and memories, while I stepped into a future they were never meant to own. The next major holiday came fast, Thanksgiving. Every year, my house had hosted it. Not because they asked, but because it was convenient. More room, better oven, enough chairs. Grace used to text me 2 days before. Hey, can you do the stuffing again? Yours is just less soggy than Mom's. No invite, just expectation. I was the venue, the unpaid planner, the cleanup crew. And they'd sit there, grinning, complimenting the centerpiece I made, then switching to a new topic whenever I spoke. But this year the gate code was changed. And my new tenant? A woman named Dr. Hadley, who ran prenatal care programs and didn't take kindly to surprise doorbell rings from emotional aunts with store-bought pies. At 3:48 p.m., Grace posted a photo. 10 of them, cramped in a tiny condo kitchen, folding chairs lined up like it was a job interview. The caption read, "Family isn't about where you are, it's about who shows up. Red heart, #thankful." Except I did show up. For years. I showed up when Dad was recovering from his heart surgery, and no one else remembered the medication chart. I showed up when Mom forgot to get the heater fixed in winter, and I paid for it quietly. I showed up when Grace couldn't make rent and called me sobbing at 1:30 a.m., and I zelled her $1,200 before she even asked. But I never got a plate, never got a speech, never even got a chair with my name on it. So this year, I set a new table. Not figuratively. Literally. At Shoreline Integrative Center, we hosted our first community Thanksgiving. We opened the clinic lounge, catered a meal, and invited single mothers, underpaid caretakers, and women who didn't have real family but had real hearts. There were tears. There was dancing. There were toasts that said thank you with sincerity, not obligation. Mid-meal, an older woman stood up and looked straight at me. "You gave us a place to be seen," she said. "That's not family by blood. That's family by choice." The room clapped. And I realized this was home. Not the house I sold. Not the DNA I left behind. But the table where I no longer had to shrink to fit. Later that night, I checked my phone. No missed calls. Just one message from Layla, my cousin. "They still don't get it. But I do. You built something real. I'm proud of you." I looked around. At the full plates, the full hearts, and I thought, they can keep their banner. Because forever doesn't mean anything when it only applies to the ones they choose. But now, I choose. By December, the family had a new strategy. Rewrite the past fast. Grace posted a carousel of old photos. Us in matching sweaters. Me, age 10, carving turkey while the adults drank wine. Caption. Through ups and downs, we've always been together. That's what matters. Red heart, #family is everything. Except no. We weren't always together. They were always together. I was the one behind the camera. The one washing dishes alone. The one sleeping on the pull-out sofa because Grace called the guest room first. This wasn't nostalgia. It was a cover-up. And I wasn't going to let it stand. But I also wasn't going to fight. I didn't need to, because the clinic, it was growing fast. We were booked solid into March. 2 new physicians joined our team, and a local reporter asked to do a human interest feature called Healing Her Way. I agreed, but on one condition. I told the truth. No glossing. No soft focus version of what happened. Just the raw, simple truth. I came home from a medical workshop and found 102 people hosting a party under my roof. A party I was never invited to. That's when I realized, sometimes, blood doesn't mean belonging. The article went viral. I got emails from women across the country. Some crying. Some angry. All of them saying the same thing. Thank you for saying it. I thought I was the only one. But the best part? We got a letter, handwritten, from a former nurse practitioner named Clarice. She wrote, "When I was pushed out of my family for choosing hospice work over private hospitals, I thought I'd die invisible. But seeing your clinic, seeing how you turned pain into structure, I finally believe there's value in what I did." We hired her the next week, not because her story broke our hearts, but because her story built them. Meanwhile, the group chat exploded again. Someone had sent the article to Mom. She didn't call, didn't message, just updated her Facebook bio from proud mother of two to nothing. Erased me again. But this time, it didn't hurt, because what they don't understand is this. You can rewrite the photo captions, crop out the hard moments, pretend everyone smiled, but real legacy is in the names whispered by the people you helped when no one else showed up. And those stories? They can't erase them. Not from the walls of my clinic, not from the mouths of my patients, and not from the one story I finally wrote for myself. New Year's Eve. The one night my parents insisted was sacred tradition. Matching outfits. Dad's weird lentil soup. Champagne flutes none of us liked. Every year, I'd stand in the kitchen slicing fruit for a punch I wasn't allowed to pour because Grace is better at the aesthetic stuff. And every year, at exactly 12:01 a.m., I'd be the one holding the camera, not the one in the photo. But this year, no invitation came. Not even a forwarded link to the family group Zoom. And still, I smiled. Because while they were prepping for confetti and performance, I was prepping for purpose. I was co-hosting a midnight circle at the clinic, a quiet gathering of women and caretakers who had no one else to count the clock down with. Some were patients. Some were single. Some were just tired of pretending they felt loved in places that only tolerated them. We sat in a circle. No fireworks. Just warmth. Candles. Real stories. A teacher shared how her own brother took over her house after she cared for their dying mother. A mother admitted her daughter hadn't spoken to her in 6 years because she didn't choose the right man. And then they looked at me. "What about you, Dr. Reyes?" one asked gently. "What did you leave behind this year?" I took a breath. "An address," I said. "And a version of myself who waited too long for someone to save her a seat." They nodded. Not in sympathy, in understanding. Because we all knew what it felt like to be present in everyone else's life, but absent from our own. At midnight, we rang in the new year together, not with noise, but with peace. Across town, Grace posted a reel. Matching dresses. Party horns. Caption. "The ones who matter are always here, kiss mark sparkles." Still trying to speak to me through exclusion. But I didn't feel hurt. I felt proof that I no longer needed their invitations to feel welcome, because I'd made my own space, one that never asked people to shrink, a space that didn't care about optics, only truth. And truthfully, this was the first New Year's I hadn't felt alone. Because when you stop begging for connection and start building community, you stop being erased. You become unmissable. 3 months later, I received a thick white envelope, handwritten, from Mom. Inside, a long letter, sloppy cursive, pages of reflections and justifications. "We didn't mean to hurt you. You've always been more independent. We thought you preferred it. You were busy. We didn't want to burden you with hosting. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. Still asking me to fold myself back into a shape that made them comfortable. Still pretending it was a misunderstanding, not a pattern. Still trying to return to a home they burned while I was away, thinking I wouldn't smell the smoke when I came back." The last page had a bold ask. "Come to Grace's baby shower. It won't be the same without you. She misses you." I didn't attend. Instead, I hosted a clinic event that weekend. A wellness day for first-time mothers without support systems. We offered free prenatal checkups, counseling circles, and baby essentials. One of the women pulled me aside and whispered, "Thank you. I haven't felt like someone cared in a long time." I smiled. "You're not alone anymore." Later, while cleaning up, I saw a text from Layla. "Grace is crying. Your absence is louder than any gift." She meant it as guilt, but I took it as truth. Because sometimes the greatest power isn't in slamming a door, it's in never returning to the one you were never truly welcome in. 2 days later, a photo went up on Grace's socials. Her in a pastel dress, surrounded by baby balloons, fake smiles, and that same old banner. Family means forever. Except the house in the background wasn't mine. They'd rented a venue this time. Because the real home? The one they once claimed with their wine glasses and matching shirts? That home had walls now. Standards.
Lux.
It wasn't for them anymore. Because family, that only sees your worth when you're useful, isn't forever. But what I built
Is.
Shoreline Integrative was now in its second phase of expansion. A second clinic. A scholarship fund. A waiting list of women who used to feel as invisible as I did in my own dining room. And me? I was no longer asking to be seen. I was the spotlight now. So, when people say, "You sold your childhood home," I say,
No.
I reclaimed it. I turned it